welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, as always, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Senior editor Seth Bendel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
And media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
I want to read to you guys from 18 U.S. Code Section 241, Conspiracy Against Rights. This was sent to me by our friend Annie McCarthy. I want to read to you the text. It's 3 paragraphs. If 2 or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because he is having so exercised the same, or if 2 or more persons go in disguise on the highway or on the premises of another with intent to prevent or hinder his free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege so secured, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. And then there are more various other penalties that are enumerated here. So we have 2 very important aspects of the scandals that are going on currently, and particularly in the fallout from what happened Sunday morning in Los Angeles at the Pico Robertson synagogue. One, that you cannot interfere, conspire to oppress people in the free enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him. That would mean, say, the freedom of assembly, which doesn't just mean the freedom to stand on a street corner and yell and scream at other people, but also the freedom to go into a building that you wish to attend a real estate expo at. And secondly, if you go on disguise on the highway, aka masking, with the intent to prevent or hinder his free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege so secured. So if you actually, according to federal law, and this law passed June 25th, 1948, and as we know, passed in order to prevent the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, that if you do so, you are subject to federal penalty in pretty severe circumstances. Seth Mandel, both these things were present at Pico Robertson. Where are the feds?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody gets hurt while if you injure somebody trying to prevent them from entering your house of worship, that's open and closed, right? I mean, there's the things that happened at Pico Robertson are unambiguous. I don't think that anybody, I brought bear spray to keep out Jews from their synagogue because somebody was selling land inside that they legally own. Like, there's no, even when you ask them, what is the reason you did this? It's a civil rights violation. It's, there's no, like, they would plead guilty. They don't have another excuse for what happened. They have, and this is part of the reason that the DOJ, Biden administration, has to actually step up at some point and do something and take some action, because people have gotten the impression that you could just go with bear spray and, 2x4s and skateboards and whatever, and literally just say, yes, we are here to prevent Jews from entering their house of worship. Yes, that's the whole event. We scheduled this ahead of time. We told you that's what we were doing here. The cops cordoned, we know people on the ground there, Noah Pollock and others, friends and people we know personally who were there that day, had to go around the back entrance because the front was cordoned off for protesters. I mean, this was all. So you have a situation where you have incentivized this kind of brazenness where people will just say, yes, I'm violating federal law, I'm violating their civil rights because I don't like what they're doing inside, and nothing happens. These are the cases where you really have to do something, take some action, not because I'm a big fan of just do something politics, but because this is a line that when you cross, the other side of this gets really bad.
And
Okay,
they,
so specifically in terms of the bear spray, if you want to understand what Seth is talking about, go to X or Twitter and look up Cam Higby. Cam Higby is one of these YouTube, TikTok journalists who makes videos. He's got like more than 1 million followers. And he was there, and a guy emptied out a can of bear spray on him. He was not, by the way, trying to go to the shul to see the real estate expo. He was there as a citizen journalist. Rabbi grabbed him, pulled him away, started treating him with water. I actually had never seen a bear spray can opened up, so it's bright yellow chemical substance. Um, I mean, if that is not felony assault, nothing is felony assault. The person, I don't know what happened to the specific person who emptied the bear spray can on Cam Higby. I know some people got arrested. The couple in the couple
but
in the car with the kid with the baby in a keffiyeh got arrested, and then maybe that was in relation to this. But I'm just saying, if you want to know why this is now the second day that we're leading and talking about this, uh, this is why there was a mass assault in front of a synagogue, and where is ever I
Well, this is I mean, Biden right now has both a criminal justice problem and a political problem. The criminal justice problem is that this is an administration that has gone after parents upset who show up at a school board meeting. It has gone after pro-life old ladies who peacefully protest outside abortion clinics. It goes after its people who violate the law, and they prosecute to the letter of the law when the views are not do not align with what the Biden administration wants to see. Here we have a clear example, and everyone can see it, of civil rights being violated, people's rights being violated, and all we got from this administration, we've heard nothing from the Attorney General. Here's what President Biden, many hours after the event said, and he didn't say this, somebody tweeted this for him: "I'm appalled by the scenes outside of Adas Torah Synagogue in Los Angeles. Intimidating Jewish congregants is dangerous, unconscionable, anti-Semitic, and un-American. Americans have a right to peaceful protest." So he's appalled. Well, that's nice. What he is also is the chief law enforcement officer of this country, and so he is in charge here in terms of sending the message that this sort of behavior is unconscionable. The political problem is that, again, he ran on restoring the soul of the nation. Any act of violence under Trump is Trump's responsibility. And now he is in the position of tacitly endorsing violence against Jews.
You mentioned that they go after so and so and so. There's people were convicted and are in prison right now for carrying cans of bear spray.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, I don't think carrying the cans of bear spray on January 6th was what they were convicted of. I think you're allowed to carry a can of bear spray.
Trespass and stuff.
But
yes.
but the existence, I think, of the can of bear spray was used in some of these cases as evidence of having a criminal or murderous intent, or what a felonious intent to injure other people under this very statute. So it's not just that they go after other crimes that they like, as opposed to these crimes that make them uncomfortable or something. And that's another question, why they make them uncomfortable. But that bear spray has figured in the plot of the 2020s as a feature of the January 6th insurrection. But here we saw the can open up on a human being.
So,
Ava, I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay. So, the thing that I keep thinking about is Biden initially addressed the campus protests in a speech. He came out at some point to talk about what was going on. And he opens up with the throat clearing about how protest is healthy. Protest there's a strong, important tradition. You should be free to protest. But, and then he gets into hatred has no place, all that stuff, right? But really what's happened, and what that was, and what's happened ever since, the throat clearing is the point. They are focused on the It's just and important and right, and your right to express protest and freedom of speech. They are so focused on that. That is their messaging strategy for this whole thing. It is not about quelling the anti-Semitism, the violence, the crimes. I mean, don't forget that there were mobs outside of the White House in masks calling for jihad, and the police stood down. That's where we're at.
The other important aspect of this is that it appears in the tweet that Christine read, right? What is the first clause? I mean, he says, I'm appalled by blah, blah. While the right to protest is so important in this country, yada, 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 yada. Now, you can say it. It's fine to say it. The right to we have a right to protest. But what do you want to emphasize? Do you want to emphasize while the right to protest this is not the way to do it? Or do you want to emphasize, I'm appalled at what is going on. Anti-Semitism has no place in this country. Crimes against Jews really have no place in this country. We're going to come down like a ton of bricks on everybody who did this. Thanks so much. See you Thursday. You don't have to say the right to protest is enshrined in our Constitution at every single turn. That is a choice. That is a choice of emphasis. If you put it in there as though somebody is going to forget, then you are, I think, as you say, Abe, signaling that you are nervous about saying the thing that you're saying, and you want to qualify it. And why are they nervous? Why are they nervous? And Seth, you know why they're nervous. Let's talk about the efforts to excuse this away, right? What was the effort on the part of leftists and as a Jew, Katie Halper and others? Why was this deemed to be a protest that was thematically legitimate, as opposed to, say, people defending whether or not the things got violent?
Because Jews were selling land they legally owned. There was a realist inside the synagogue. Oh, where in Israel?
They don't legally own. I'm going to sell you this. I'm selling you this pew. I'm going to sell you this. Jews do this in synagogues, of course. I'm going to sell you this plaque.
Yeah. We also auction
in honor of your grandfather Sholem. That
the
was
Yom Kippur appeal. We also auction off all those Aliyahs.
Yeah.
No, there was. I mean, it was a real estate. You want to call it an expo, but it's obviously not some law. It's not filling out the Javits Center here. We're talking about a few people in Adas, Israel, but if people are selling land in Israel. And this is, the complaint, people say the complaint as if it makes sense. I mean, go back to what you're saying about Biden, right? Everybody has the right to protest, but maybe Biden should say, but were you raised by wolves? Why are you protesting a synagogue? Like, why, everybody has the right to protest, but you can also criticize the decision to protest Jews living in their ancestral homeland. You can also criticize people's it is legal to be a jerk. It is legal to be this, but you are an embarrassment. They should say that too. The problem that people have is with Jews. If you look at the base complaint of so much of this conflict, it's Jews are trying to live somewhere. Right? What is a fight over a settlement, but Jews trying to live somewhere? What is a fight? I mean, the forward said something about Efrat you mentioned yesterday, right? If Efrat is a settlement,
in a second.
Okay. Yeah, Jews living in, I mentioned yesterday on X on Twitter that the New York Times had been reporting on Jews leaving Brooklyn and moving into Jersey City in the area a few years ago. And it was about a year before there was a murderous attack on Jews in Jersey City. And the article was about the tensions raised, and they used the word provoke. They've provoked tensions by moving there. Ultra-Orthodox Jews had moved out of their cage, apparently, into Jersey City. I'm from Lakewood, New Jersey, which is south-ish Jersey, and next to us in Jackson, there has been for a decade or more than a decade, actually, a fight over Jews moving to this area where religious Jews haven't lived before. They're moving out of Lakewood is the complaint, and the fights over an Eruv or the ability to build a synagogue, all these sorts of things. These are happening in New Jersey, in New York, just as they're happening in Israel and elsewhere. And if you and when you get down to it, the basic complaint is provoking tensions with their neighbors by moving there, by living there. And that's what was happening in LA at Pico Robertson, at Adas Israel, is that Jews live there, and that's a problem. And one side in this conflict is saying, we want them to stop killing us, and the other side is saying we want them to stop living among us. And we're
let's dig into this. Okay, so there's an expo, meaning real estate agents are showing flyers with properties for sale in Israel for purchase by people in Los Angeles. Something happened yesterday afternoon in the newspaper, The Forward. It's not even a newspaper because it doesn't even come out in print. I don't know. It's a piece of garbage, but it's now a virtual piece of garbage. It is a storied tradition, a paper begun in 1896 by the great Abe Khan that is now under the leadership of the repugnant Jody Rudoran. And in the article, trying to describe what happened at Adas Torah, the author of the article, whose name I am not going to mention because that would just give him publicity, said, well, one of the things is that they were selling apartments, including apartments in Efrat. Efrat is a settlement, nominally, because it is across the Green Line being the 1949 armistice border of Israel with the Arabs when the War of Independence came to an end. Efrat is a very old, one of the oldest communities, Jewish communities on the other side of the Green Line, pretty much started by Jews from New York, from Lincoln Square Synagogue, moved to Israel. Here's what's interesting about this. So because and then it turns out, I don't think it's true, by the way, that there was an apartment for sale in Efrat that was being offered for sale at Adas Torah, according to the subsequent reporting. But let's just think about the theory here. The theory here is that Jews who seek to sell or own property in Efrat on the other side of the Green Line of the 1949 armistice border are doing something illegitimate. Forward is a Jewish paper. I understand that many Jews think that there should be a two-state solution, and some even think that there should be a two-state solution that restores the Green Line, though you would have to be a psychotic lunatic with no understanding of anything about human nature to believe that that is even remotely feasible. But okay, be a psychotic lunatic or a liar or not know anything or actually want Israel destroyed, whatever. The idea that a Jewish newspaper or the Jews anywhere should say that it is permissible to argue that Jews should not be allowed to live anywhere on this planet. That is a surrender to the most basic form of anti-Semitism. This has been an issue with arguments and discussions about territorial concessions by Israel to the Palestinians, which is, it is understood that 20% of the population of the state of Israel is Arab. Apparently, 100% of the population of a future Palestinian state must be Arab, and 0% of it must be Jewish. That if there were true peace between Arabs and and Jews and Palestinians and Jews, the settlements, as they are constituted, would continue to exist. Palestinians from the West Bank come into Israel to work. Jews could leave Palestine, the future Palestine, to go into Israel to work, or vice versa, or whatever. 20% of the population of the West Bank could be Jewish. Why not? That's what peace is. That's what real peace would be.
You just mentioned the land laws, by the way. Palestinians have actual laws on the books. You're not allowed to sell land to a Jew.
Right. That's peace. No, for any Jew on this planet to argue that it is acceptable for there to be laws and rules that say that Jews cannot own property is a form of self-abnegation and self-destruction that reveals who they are. And the forward should be closed, and it should be burned, and the ground where it was should be salted forever so that nothing ever like it should ever take its place. And by the way, it is going to run out of money at some point in the next couple of years. And let that be its monument, that it should publish a sentence like that. Is to say that Abe Khan is rolling in his grave would be unfair, to twisters and earthquakes. I only bring that up because it is an implicit part of this argument that there are two sides to the discussion, aside from the mere violence. What explains why there was a protest? Well, there was a real estate expo, and people don't think that there should be sales of apartments in Israel. Oh, that's the explanation. Thank you so much for your explanation. Every single person in front of that synagogue should be in jail today for hindering the freedom of assembly of others. And the LA police chief should be fired for creating the cordon that gave them space, and the LA police chief should be fired for setting a policy that said that Jews are not allowed to walk in the front door of a synagogue. And the mayor of LA should be recalled for approving this implicitly by having that police chief or police chief. This is no joke. Like, we are in very, very dark territory here. I mean, I'm not saying this is, these are the Hitler laws, or it's 1932 or anything like that. I'm really not saying that, and I do not believe that.
But it is going to get worse, because it has gotten worse. And every time there's a massive flagrant transgression like this that goes unpunished, it grants permission for the next one to be worse. And it's going to get worse. And we're going to get into deeply scary territory. We're in it, but I continue to feel we ain't seen nothing yet.
Okay, I want to add to that, because tonight, very important primary, right? Jamal Bowman versus George Latimer in New York, in the district that encompasses much of Westchester and some of the Bronx. And we talked yesterday about Bowman's rhetoric at this rally where, he said, "You're going to see who the F we are," and all of that. And I have to say, I hadn't thought of this, but Megan Blonder in the Free Beacon has a very interesting piece this morning. Okay, so let me just read a little bit of it. Rep Jamal Bowman addressed his crowd defiantly, warned his adversaries they were about to experience, quote, "the power of the mother effing South Bronx." There's just one problem. Bowman does not represent the South Bronx. Represents the North Bronx, which is where Co-op City is, the largest private housing development in the United States, and which borders Westchester. There are about 40,000 people from the Bronx in the district, 450,000 people from Westchester in the district. So what does he mean? We're about to experience the power of the mother effing South Bronx when the mother effing South Bronx isn't in his district. He means there are going to be riots if he loses. That's what he means. He means there's going to be violence if he loses. He was directing that crowd to get hot and angry and under the collar, he is an American. Now we know this rhetoric, right? We know people use this rhetoric, have been using this rhetoric since 2016, whatever. On the Republican side, have not quite this rhetoric, but in the it's going to get worse category. Jamal Bowman and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could effectively tonight or tomorrow call for some kind of riot. That's implicit in this. So that's where things are getting worse. And where they're getting worse is that there's another primary in 2 months, or I don't know, it's 7 weeks in St. Louis, right, where Cori Bush, her Bowman's fellow squad member, is up under conditions very similar, although without the same population density or ethnic circumstances that are making it seem like it's extraordinarily likely that Latimer will not only win, but is going to win in a landslide. Now that's worse. We're about to have a debate that's going to turn on the question of whether or not a leading politician in the United States was encouraging political violence in 2020. Well, what if that happens the day before the debate in the Democratic Party in the highest profile congressional race in the nation? What's Biden going to say? Because he's going to be asked about it. Anybody?
I agree that that's the kind of language you're using, and that's the kind of intent that Bowman and AOC seem to have. Do you think enough people will care if he loses?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Do you think it'll be I don't.
Do you remember the footage from that rally where they were both jumping around on stage like maniacs? There were fewer than 100 people. And the way they staged the shot to go on social media made it look like there was a crowd, but somebody took a picture from behind the stage looking at the crowd, and it was quite small. It wasn't some massive rally. So, I mean, and he even among some Democrats, he's seen as sort of a buffoon. So I don't know if people would actually riot, but the use of the language itself is notable because it's something that Democrats have constantly harped on Republicans for doing, using language to incite and whatnot. And again, I go back to Biden's political challenge here. He ran on restoring order and civility and the soul of the nation, and his own party is right now having a very dark night of the soul, and he's pretending it's not happening.
Well, he's busy. He's doing debate prep. Very, very busy, Christine. I don't think you understand.
I had a kid in Model UN. They didn't prep this much before.
There
like
are 275 people in debate prep. I read who was like at Camp David doing debate prep. It was like they had the cleaning lady, they had the Marlboro man. I don't know. It's like I don't know how he's sitting there going, I can't. There's too many messages coming at me. There are too many. Say this. Try that. Try the other thing. However, Biden is in a uniquely bad position in this sense, which is that if he does not say the right thing about what happened in L.A., and Jake Tapper and Dana Bash will ask him about L.A. Dana Bash, by the way, not that I want to stereotype her, is the daughter of a rabbi. So this is something that is must be very real to her as the daughter of a rabbi. That protests are taking place at synagogues. Anyway, it is going to come up. So, and Biden wants to lean in on January 6th, right? So he wants this debate to be about January 6th. I don't know that Trump will be in a position to throw, this violence at him, as a counterpoise or counterweight or something like that, since he thinks that January 6th was fine. Or something, but like Hunter and like other issues, there are things that start neutralizing his natural advantages, right? When something like this is happening in his own party, that neutralizes the advantage he has over Trump on the question of which candidate or which party is fomenting or at least appearing to support some version of political violence.
And it doesn't matter if he says, even if he says, like his tweets, these anodyne series of tweets or statements about, isn't it, you have a right to protest, but it's, let's not go overboard here, ladies and gentlemen. It's the same challenge he has, every time he actually does directly engage with anti-Semitism, he always says Islamophobia too. So it doesn't matter if he even says these things, because he's got to take action against the people doing them. He's got to, I mean, we've talked about whether or not he could ever actually have a Sister Soldier moment, but he has not condemned any of that behavior by name. He hasn't said the rhetoric coming out of Jamal Bowman's mouth is unacceptable. We do not accept that this is not how we talk about our fellow citizens. None of that stuff.
He showed up with AOC I mean, we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but he was with AOC and at a climate policy proposal, reveal, something like that, where he said, I learned a long time ago, always listen to this woman.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't have to praise them in person, and he does that. He
gave Bowman a shout out at a fundraiser in New York too.
Well, see, there you go. You go. I mean, this is basic stuff that you don't want to. I mean, we see people in the Republican Party dance around this sort of thing with Trump sometimes, where it's like Larry Hogan in Maryland. Now that Trump says he likes Larry Hogan and wants him to win, how does Larry Hogan deal with Trump liking him? Right. I mean, there's like a whole, do you show up with him? This is a thing that people in politics, but Biden's people don't seem to have any problem with the association at all. Normally, when you take some step to distance yourself, even if it's just surface level, you are at least showing, I don't know, I'm not 100% comfortable with Jamal Bowman. And that, in itself, that's at least something. It's like, oh, this person is awake. I'm not, but there's been no effort to do it. And I also think that, this is to go back to Cori Bush for a second. The problem here is Cori Bush's district includes Ferguson, Missouri, right? Cori Bush, is out in Ferguson and has been saying for years that the problem in Ferguson is the same problem in Palestine. And the cops are trained, the American cops are trained by Israeli cops to do this. And they were asking Palestinian activists for help in Ferguson with tear gas and things like that. Cori Bush's district is not a Jewish district, but she has been making race war commentary and putting it in the context of it's all the Jews' fault, the global Jews' fault. Ferguson happened because of Israel. We know that this is the same thing that happens. The struggle is the same. And that's the sort of thing that is really genuinely dangerous. And if Biden doesn't understand that, I mean, it's one thing to it's one thing to take the Jewish vote for granted, which is just something that happens because of the situation that we're in. Population size, the fact that, they are going to vote for him for the most part, and others, but this is not like taking the Jewish vote for granted or ignoring Jews. This is like, you have people out there in the streets, members of Congress, making all sorts of race war instigations and making them about Jews. This was going on the last time there were riots and protests and things were on fire all over the country. And they made that in 2020 about Jews also. So this is going to keep coming up. Every time we have a sort of summer of fire, it gets turned back around to the Jews.
And whenever some crazy white nationalist or racist group waved a Nazi flag when Trump was president, that was on Trump's head, right? You must announce this. You must do something about this. So we have in New York on the regular now Hezbollah and Hamas flags being waved by protesters. Why is that not Joe Biden's problem? I mean, this double standard is.
It is Joe Biden's problem.
Yes, I mean, we know it is, but does he know it is?
But I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Here's it's worse than that moment. The problem is that
it's worse than that corner with Abe Greenwald.
The problem is that there is this massive coordinated game of make-believe going on. The media is doing it. The entire Democratic establishment's doing it. They are pretending that certain people are normal politicians. Feisty, but normal, they're pretending that Jamal Bowman, who's getting up there and screaming about AIPAC and cursing and pulling fire alarms to disrupt Congress. They're pretending that Rashida Tlaib. They're pretending that Ilhan Omar. They pretended from the get-go that Ilhan Omar, that these are normal politicians. They're just passionate. This whole game has got to stop. They are very far from normal politicians. They are dangerous, racist maniacs. And they have completely captured the sympathies of the establishment Democrats. Establishment Democrats are scared enough of their constituents to participate in this game.
I love their passion.
Yeah.
I mean, I may not agree with everything that they say, but I love their passion. Now, look, 30 years ago, there was a politician exactly like them in the Democratic Party. Her name was Cynthia McKinney. She was a congressman from Georgia, and the entire Democratic Party went after her hammer and tongs the way that they went after Steve King in 2016 and got her out of American politics. Now, the voters in America may start doing that starting today. Jamal Bowman may be dethroned, and Cori Bush may be dethroned in Missouri. That will be a very big moment, because the squad, as it is genuinely constituted, is really only 5 or 6 people. If 2 of them are defeated by Democrats in Democratic primaries, that is a very serious and significant message, and will be
Ilhan Omar's primary 2 years ago was close, very close.
That's right. So it will be grounds for optimism that even the Democratic Party is saying no. But if it doesn't, and it doesn't happen, and this goes on like this, of course, as we've seen in the Republican Party, a kind of antinomian constituency develops that's like, I don't care about, I hate norms. I don't care about norms. And you can say whatever you want to, like Lauren Boebert could practically pull a gun on someone in the House chamber. She might be going, on her way out as well, apparently. So that's an interesting aspect in another way. But I do think that it's got to stop. There's nothing that's going to stop it naturally. And the reason this is going to happen to Bowman and Bush is, again, the harnessing of minority power. The same way that minority power was harnessed to get a lot of these people elected in places where these districts were being represented by old Democratic hacks or whatever. And minority power was harnessed to get Cori Bush elected, to get Jamal Bowman elected, to get Ilhan Omar elected, to get Ayanna Pressley elected, people like that. Minority power, and that is to say Jewish minority power, has got to be harnessed to make it clear that if these are the views that you are going to espouse and you're going to try to build a career on, you are going to face incredible headwinds and opposition, and the force of a small group of people who are willing to use the means that they have to protect their people from you. And that is, this is sort of my new activist message. I got another activist message for you. It's a message in favor of work. Doesn't sound like something that needs activism. Everybody's got to work. You got to put food on the table and all of that. But why don't people make a positive case for work? Why don't people talk about the glories of work, the dignity of work, the way that work transcends and helps you transcend your day-to-day circumstances and do productive things that benefit not only your family and your community, but your country, the nation's economy, and serves as a kind of example of our own God-given gifts. That's what you get from David Bahnsen's book, Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life. David, a financial manager and economist, harnesses arguments, both theological, historical, ontological, to make the case for work not as a necessary evil, but as a signature part of our identities and the things that make us human and that make us our best selves. So it is not a kind of book you've ever read, go to fulltimebook.com to find out more, or just go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and buy David Bahnsen's Full-Time Work in the Meaning of Life. That's Bahnsen. You will profit from it both personally, possibly financially, and also spiritually. The Israeli Supreme Court, by the way, has just ruled that Haredi Orthodox men who have been exempted for the last 75 years from military service must now be drafted into the Israeli into the IDF, thus creating a new political crisis inside Israel. This is interesting because much of the controversy in the first 10 months of the year before October 7th in Israel centered on changes to the Israeli political system that would weaken the Supreme Court. And only one of those provisions even sort of came to a vote. And there's now talk that this will be the end of Bibi Netanyahu's coalition, that his government will collapse because the largest of the ultra orthodox political parties, this is one of their leading mainstream issues. I don't know if that's the case actually, because there's been a kind of sea change since October 7th. And the political leadership may think that this is important. It's not clear. Interestingly enough, the Israeli military is not all that jazzed about the idea of a universal conscription of Haredim, because this creates all kinds of difficulty, could create all kinds of logistical difficulties for sex separation and when you do what, where, and protecting the religious sensitivities of the ultra-Orthodox when they actually have to fight wars or train or do whatever after the war is happening. But Seth, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of sort of social experimentation that you want to introduce gradually if you're going to do this. But the problem is that you can't make a decision that you're going to draft all Haredim and then implement it piecemeal or a la carte when you're in the middle of a war where 3.5% of the country is mobilized already. So that's the state they're in. It's not, it's like, it's like the old Jewish answer to this. Some say this, some say that. Some in Israel say they don't need them. Some in Israel say they do need them in the army. It's hard to say definitively, do they need to do this? The answer is, I don't know. I'm not sure anybody knows for sure, but they need to figure this sort of stuff out. But also it's a question of, they know that there's a certain amount of protesting from the Haredi community that will come with this. And so there's a don't rock the boat segment of the Israeli political establishment that kind of just doesn't want to do this now. Their attitude is, yes, the Haredim should be drafted, but I need this like I need a hole in the head sort of thing. So the winds blowing against full conscription of the Haredim include people who think they should be drafted because they know that you don't want to introduce any sort of, another, we call it agent of instability or whatever, in the midst of the wars that they're in. And the year before the war broke out on October 7th was filled with the judicial reform protests. And that was the judicial reform protests had a very strong theme of religious versus secular Jews also to it. Will there be, the idea that this was going to give religious even more power and things like that? So they know what that's like, and what they're trying to prevent is a return to the kind of judicial protest atmosphere in the middle of a war in which, again, like 3.5% of the country is mobilized, another full percent of the country is displaced from various places. I mean, so I think that the Supreme Court has a habit, the Israeli Supreme Court has a habit of like, what's the worst timing we can do for these sorts of things? They did it. They overturned part of the only part of the judicial reform that was really passed. They did that in the early part of the war as sort of like a dare where the government try to fight on two fronts at once, with the Supreme Court and the legal establishment. So I think that, part of this is just timing, which is that whether you agree with the underlying point or not of who needs to be drafted when, there is a sense of not now. And I think that sense is a fairly popular one of like, I don't want to have this discussion right now.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I mean, that you're right, but I mean that's been vitiated by the fact that now
Right.
there is a ruling, and without the judicial reforms, the government has no choice but to implement the ruling. Now it can slow walk it. We'll see what happens here. The notion that the government is going to collapse over this is so exciting to the people who want the government to collapse that they sort of fail to reckon with the fact that the next government is going to be better for. It's not the government. It's not Bibi's government that led to the Supreme Court making this ruling. So and the Haredim have got to figure out like who's better for them. And
that's part of the instability thing is that, in a normal situation, this sort of thing would cause Bibi to dissolve the government and go to elections. Because
Maybe.
he knows.
I don't know that either.
I don't know that. I don't think he's going to do that in the middle of a war, is what I'm saying. Or at least I don't know. But in the past, the way that he would deal with these sort of things is to say, well, they just gave me my election vote. I'm going to run against guys who are saying we're going to draft all the Haredim. The religious parties will vote with me, and I'll have a 62 or 63 seat. I don't know what his response is here.
He doesn't want to say that. He doesn't actually. No. The whole point about Bibi is he doesn't want to say that he doesn't want the Haredim drafted. He does not want affirmatively to say that the Haredim should not be drafted. This is a very complicated issue. Like, he believes in universal conscription and he believes in the Israeli military. And this has been a necessary political compromise started as so many stupid policies in Israel were by David Ben-Gurion's stupid idea that religion wasn't going to matter in Israel, because it didn't, matter to him very much. Anyway, a lot of stupid.
There were only, 400 students at the time, and it was going to stay that way because everybody knows that ultra-Orthodox Jews' birth rates are very low, and
very low.
So
very low.
You don't have to worry about.
Once the socialist paradise
changing,
and once the socialist paradise came to be, who would be interested in such backward and anachronistic ideas? Okay, so. Meanwhile, this is all happening, by the way, on the backdrop of it's not clear. It appears that the Rafah victory may be at hand, although Israeli military spokesmen are saying we're not going to defeat Hamas as an idea. We're just going to say that we won on the battlefield, and Bibi's saying we got to move troops north, and everything is very confused. And so this adds another element of absolute instability to an Israeli populace that deserves a lot better. Meanwhile, also, the Knesset has read a bill to raise the reservists' age. And this is of interest to me because I have family who are reaching the upper end of reservist age, and that's like 40 or even older in some cases, and they may need, because of the nature of the fighting. So suddenly, we're going to have an argument about the Haredim in Israel while 45-year-old Israelis may find themselves, back in uniform. Whatever. The whole thing is
right. There was the pre-2015 requirements that they want to return to, which would also increase the time that the mandatory service time by several months, depending on what level you are, and it would also increase the time you serve for the 20 days for soldiers, 30 days for officers, and length and all. So it would raise all sorts of the limits, but people would spend more time away, which was part of the economic worries and the economic anxiety over the war as well, which is that people would be forced to spend even more time away from their homes and their businesses.
Right. Okay, so we're running late. We have some other stuff to do, so I think we're gonna skip the recommendation for today. We'll be back tomorrow. for Abe, Seth, and Christine, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.